Welcome everyone to City of Binghamton business meeting for Wednesday, September 1st. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Scaringi.
Present.
Councilwoman Riley.
Present.
Councilwoman Friedman.
Present.
Councilman Burns is absent. And Councilman Strawn.
Present.
Councilman Scanlon.
Present.
And President Resnetti.
Present.
That's 6 here, 1 absent. Burns.
I do have to read this. Before we begin, we have some required notifications. Please know that the city abides by New York State and the CDC's requirement that unvaccinated individuals continue to wear masks indoors and remain at the 6-foot social distance, which includes in City Hall and public meetings like this one. If you're vaccinated, you do not have to wear a mask during the public meeting or be socially distanced. However, if you appear ill or present any COVID-19 symptoms, staff may ask you to leave, distance, or wear a mask regardless of your vaccination status. This meeting is being recorded with video and audio. Okay, so now we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Councilman Scaringi.
Thank you, Madam President. I stand and ask for unanimous approval for the minutes from the August 18th, 2021 business meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we need to set a public hearing for our next meeting, so Mr. Clerk.
Okay, so Binghamton City Council and the Mayor will hold a public hearing regarding RL 21-177, which is a local law amending the residency requirements for employment for the City of Binghamton. This public hearing will take place during the next regular City Council business meeting at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021, in the second floor atrium here in City Hall. Residents wishing to submit public comment electronically may do so by 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting to clerk@cityofbinghamton.com or in person during the meeting. Any questions, please contact the clerk's office.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to public comment. City residents are welcome to speak. You'll have 5 minutes to discuss any city issues, and I ask you to please be respectful. Mr. Clerk, could you please let everybody know how to participate?
Yes, you can come up one by one. Please sign in. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. And just make sure the microphone is green. And please state your full name and address for the record.
Good evening. You know who I am already, so there's no need to say it. I'm interested though because I was required to wear a mask to come up, and then you tell us when we get up here that they're not required, and they wouldn't give us one downstairs. So all the things that you do to try to dissuade people from joining in and listening in, and that's one of the most disheartening things, is there is no transparency at all. And you know, I see this document that came out for you asking to move 12 million of the ARPA funds, and then there's also a request that you asked for 23 million for second round funding. So why are you moving the first 12 million, and what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with the whole bulk of the money, and why is it such a shady thing? Why is there such a lack of transparency? Why do you stare at me every time that I talk and when I come in here? It's like you're infatuated with me. Honestly, I'd appreciate like if you didn't look at me as often as you did, because it's creepy and it's bothersome too. So if you could do that for me, I'd appreciate it. You know, you're a public servant at the end of the day. You're here to make our lives easier, not to make our lives more difficult. And so I think that you really don't get it. And so the difficulties that you're creating for us, you know, may you experience the same joys, for sure. I see Scanlon, Strawn, Resnetti, Scaringi on certain things, and then I don't see any of the rest of City Council on that. And I know that there's an issue with transparency for them, with them knowing what's going on in the conversation and them having access to information. So what is your intention? That's what I really want to know. That's what I want to hear from you. You know, is your intention to make Binghamton a better place? Because when I was walking in here this evening, I saw outside that there's the Freedom Trail sign where the Underground Railroad, where slaves were aided and abetted, you know, to be safe. And so I look at you with your ill glares and just your nasty, heinous looks. You're just disgusting, truly. And I ask you, what are you doing to protect the children of those ancestors who were once aided and abetted at this same site when you continually oppress and suppress the voices and the truth that's being told? My biggest concern is that Binghamton gets worse, and there's supposed to be a comment period where we talk about and address what we'd like to see this money done, or what we would like to see done with this money. So how about like mental health services, elder services, substance use services, homelessness services, community and youth services, family services, programs to enrich and uplift the community? You know, stop thinking that you know best. All of you live in echo chambers. You're not connected with any of us. You're connected with your little constituents that have money. You don't know anything at all. I promise you that. That's why you make the bad decisions that you continually make. With no oversight, with no consequence, no type of repercussion. And people are fed up. They're angry, they're tired. They see that there's a need, and they talk about a solution to a problem, and they watch how you deal with it. And then you try to put it onto somebody else or put it onto the other side. When you're the ones that said you were going to create transparency and wanted to reach out to the community and do better with the community and have better community resolution and better resolve, none of that's happening. Not with the marginalized and the disenfranchised community in Binghamton. You're continually denying and silencing them when they speak, any time that we speak.
You have 1 minute.
So with this last 1 minute, I'm going to get up and I want you to think about how stupid that you are. And that's specifically to Scanlon, Strawn, Resinity, and Scaringi. I don't care about political parties. People will piss on your graves.
Mr. Clerk, for the record, can you just state who that was, since he wouldn't identify himself? He said that we knew who he was. We just have a name for the record. If anybody knows. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker? Do we have another speaker?
Good evening. My name is Claudia Stallman, Stallman. I'm a resident at 81 Beethoven Street with my spouse. Christine and I have raised our 2 kids at 81 Beethoven Street. We bought the house 23 years ago because I'm a New York City transplant, came here to go to Binghamton University, moved off campus as soon as I was able, and fell in love with the west side of Binghamton. I received a master's degree at Binghamton University, stayed on to teach there, and also work across the way at the Broome County Planning Department and run the Environmental Management Council for many years. Proud to have worked for many Democrats and Republicans in the county government for many years. I woke up yesterday morning to the sound of construction noise and walked out onto my front porch at 81 and saw topsoil in the baseball field being removed right on the corner of the parking lot at Beethoven Street. I tend to pay attention to civic affairs. I tend to know what's going on in my community. But my spouse and I were shocked to see the destruction of green space that was happening right across the street from our house. It was a very unhappy noisy, disturbing site. And I later had to do some research, but found out that there is an outdoor ice skating rink being proposed for that green space, which is part of the baseball field. And that particular part of the park is the first place young parents and young children go when they park. That's a wide open space where little squirts can run and play and just have a ball. It's also, at other times, more formal use. It's the baseball field, and there's also folks who play soccer in that part of the park. It's fabulous. It's a tremendous resource to a diverse community that we live in. I'm learning now that there was no meaningful environmental impact assessment done on the project. I certainly know now that there was no community participation process, no public notification process. Lived on Beethoven Street all these years, and even when Jim May used to do the Stop DWI events on Beethoven Street and close the street, he would leaflet all the folks in all the homes around the park. So if I was shocked, and I'm a relatively aware resident of the city of Binghamton, and greatly dismayed about the way this decision was hidden, I don't see where the environmental impacts have been noted. We're already living with the debacle of the tennis courts, which are never done, which are a huge addition of impenetrable space, which is more runoff onto Beethoven Street, onto Seminary Avenue. We have water in our basement every time it rains on Beethoven Street. The street itself is running flooded oftentimes in a heavy rain. So now with all this
You have 1 minute.
additional, thank you, blacktop, and now the addition of this ice skating rink, which can only be used a very small number of months out of the year. My 16-year-old daughter is a hockey player. I have nothing against ice hockey. We love ice hockey. We go to rinks. She loves opportunities to play, but that is not an appropriate place for my daughter or anyone to play ice hockey or go ice skating. Thank you so much for your graciousness and for listening to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
My name is Marissa Robinson. I reside on Leroy Street. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but your constituents are dying. They're out here committing suicide. I don't know if you know that it has impacted a lot of people. COVID has impacted mental health for everybody within this last year. But I know 2 people personally who have lost their lives because of mental health issues this summer. And they're young. One of them younger than me. So that's just not to mention the young man who threw himself in front of a truck a few weeks ago. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. I'm looking at let me see here. You guys want to put $12 million of the ARPA funds for lost revenue. Excuse me, I'm just reading this. This is not what I do on a regular basis. But there definitely needs to be, you need to take some of that, you need to take a lot of that money and put it into mental health services for this community. I'm a military veteran. I served as 31 Bravo. If you don't know what a 31 Bravo is in the Army, that's a military police officer. Sorry, not officer, just military police. I have to drive up to Syracuse for my mental health appointments because I can't get them out here because you don't have the services for the veterans out here. You know, the ones that have served the country for your guys' rights to do whatever you want to do, and you're putting money into a tennis court, you spend millions of dollars on a tennis court that hasn't even been used. You're not putting, you out here, there's homeless people like living by the river. You have no affordable, I mean, you're going to put some money into affordable housing, but this is, and you make it hard for the regular person to understand any of these things. So maybe you guys should put some money into like having classes for the regular citizen so they can understand this, understand your guys' SOPs, understand how local government works. So, I mean, money can go into that. If you guys can put money into a tennis court, you guys can put money into that. You need to put money into the youth mental health services. You'd have to put less money into police officers, going to domestic calls, going to, I mean, there are police officers, they're supposed to be riding around, at least a mental health provider or somebody who has a degree in mental health or understands people who have mental health. They're supposed to be riding around with the Binghamton police officers, and they're not doing that. That's a fact. We know that. So like all the money that they come to, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to the regular citizen. Like, I mean, probably half of you guys were. Tom, are you retired? No, you're not retired? Well, you work for that company, Tom? No. I mean, I have 5 minutes to do whatever I want with the time. I'm going to do whatever I want with my time.
You have 1 minute.
Well, now I got 1 minute. Thank you, sir. So what? Give me 30 seconds back? I have 1 minute and 30 seconds now? All right. You ain't hearing us. You tell me that you're scared of us. Look me in my eyes. Why are you fearing us? These systematic tactics leads to more distrust. You shut down these exits to make more of you and less of us. Police escorts 33, 33, 33. What the? Oh, does my language offend you? Your tender white ears can't handle it in this venue? Maybe y'all can hear me better now. Because the only time you seem to pay attention is when we come in and make noise. Now we got to get real loud. But when it comes to stick up for the people, most of y'all don't make a sound. You got your tennis courts. But everybody dies someday. So I hope you sleep better at night with the decisions you make. How much time I got left? 10 seconds? All right, I'm gonna edit it now.
Do we have other speakers?
Good evening. My name is Tina Chronopoulos. I live on Laurel Avenue. I apologize for maybe possibly having spoken out of turn last week. I did my research. There's something called the Zoning Board of Appeals here in Binghamton. Somebody called Marina Resaniti serves on that committee or that board. Marina Resaniti works for Hinman, Howard, and Cattell as an associate in the litigation group. The Zoning Board of Appeals does review of variances and appeals related to zoning code. Marina Resaniti will serve until December 2022 I mean, based on the last name, I'm assuming some sort of relationship. There may not be any laws against that, but looks like a conflict of interest to me anyway, in the big picture. Gosh, you know, I don't even know why I bothered, because I know that you don't really care. But I'm compelled to come before you anyway to express my dismay at the potential move of $12 million of ARPA money into the general fund, which will basically allow you to do more or less what you want to do with that money. There was no open forum. There was no way of the public contributing to that conversation. The mayor seems to be implying that the people who come before you and address you on these issues are somehow special interest groups. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not a special interest group. I'm not part of anything. I'm a lone wolf, but I run with people who are cool and who have, you know, the interests of the community at heart. So I take real issue with ordinary people who come out to address you being described by City Boy 2280 as special interest groups, right? Some of those folks who talk to you tonight, they haven't come before you in a while. Others come all the time. And so this disparaging, this disdain that you put on us every time we come here to tell us what we say is basically irrelevant. It's really disgusting. And I know that I'm not going to change your minds because you subscribe to some party that believes in disenfranchising black people, that ultimately believes that taking rights away from women is a terrible thing, and yet at the same time, you know, requiring people to wear masks somehow, you know, violates your bodily integrity. Like, make that make sense. But anyway, I am here to tell you that I'm against that $12 million transfer, that I want to know exactly how you're going to spend that money. I want to know why there's such a rush in doing this. I want to know why you are moving so fast to get ready for the transfer of the next amount of money. I want to know why you are moving to spend more money on the police when the police already get so many resources in this community, why you are so keen on policing people who don't really need to be policed, you know? The way to ensure that the community is safe is by providing resources that they need. We know this. And yet you act as if you will exist in some kind of other world. By the way, can I just talk a little bit about competency here? 2 weeks ago, you were set to vote on rezoning for Bates Troy, and Aviva Friedman told us that she doesn't feel comfortable voting because the materials that she needed to review, she received via email during the meeting last week. What is going on with you people? You all don't have your shit together? You don't know how to use email? Give your colleagues the decency of getting materials, at least with 24 hours notice? It's really embarrassing. It really is embarrassing, you know. Another thing I want to mention again is what's happening with the Veolia audit. Who's going to pay for it?
1 minute.
Have you talked about that? The consent order still hasn't been lifted. We haven't mentioned the ballooning costs. Is the mayor, City Boy 2280, trying to make himself look better? And then finally, not sure what's going on with your FOIL department. Last week when I went in to check something, I was treated with absolute disdain by the person who mans the front of the office. When I asked to see the city clerk, I was told that, you know, I should take it up with Corporation Counsel. Corporation Counsel doesn't respond to my emails. When I asked to see the city clerk in person, I was made to wait 40 minutes. It's as if they were trying to see if I would leave. And when I asked if I could see the city clerk, I cannot believe the disrespect with which I was treated there. And if I am treated like that, I cannot imagine what it's like for people who do not look like me. Please do better. I don't even know why I bother. Actually, just carry on being the ridiculous people that you are. Oh, thanks for your time, I guess.
Any other speakers tonight?
Good evening. My name is Terry Renia. I live at 5 Chapin Street. And I'm here for a couple of reasons, but I think it's really interesting. The few people who have spoken tonight and the last, I'm going to say, at least half a dozen meetings that I have watched, the overlying theme is transparency. And I want to 5 seconds of my time to say to Tina, the goal is to frustrate everyone into not coming anymore. That is the goal. And so I hope that in your frustration, you don't give up. I want to say that, first of all, I want to ask a question, and I know how this works, and I know that you guys don't have to answer questions, and really I think my question might be more for either the city clerk or corporation counsel, and I'll ask it on the record, and perhaps someone could get the answer to me. And that is that I would like to see the enabling legislation for the concrete slab, ice skating rink that's going in at Rec Park. Because again, I too pay more attention than the average person, and I saw no opportunity for public comment, no advertisement, don't know what it's costing, don't know what the plan is for it on the 9 or 10 months out of the year when it cannot be used for ice skating. Don't know why we couldn't continue with the modular system, which was working spectacularly, and which had the advantage of easily being replicated in city parks throughout the city, the east side, the north side, the south side, where we could give an opportunity to all of the city's kids to be able to ice skate as well. So I would just like to know, A, the legislation, the enabling legislation number, B, if and when public hearings are held, and I'm hoping that that enabling legislation will include a budget and budget lines. Or the other reason, the main reason I'm here is about the American Rescue Plan funds. The legislation to move $12 million at your last meeting was held over on the pretense that you wanted to make sure that this was something that could be done, moving this to essentially unrestricted funds. And on Monday, you brought an accounting firm in. I believe it's the accounting firm who does all of the city's auditing. Anyway, it would have been interesting to hear from a third non-interested body on that. That's here nor there. And you spent the meeting being assured that you could do this. One of the first things we all taught our children was just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do something. And there has been no transparency, no opportunity for the public to formally be heard from except here at these meetings. And I have watched and I have listened, and there are people here in so much pain. People who have been so devastated by the effects of COVID. People who need us to rescue them. They need you to do your fiduciary obligation and oversee these funds in a way that they are used to rescue people. They are American rescue funds. This city has never been handed $46 million in federal money ever before. It probably never will be again. And rather than taking the time, the administration or this body, to find out how best to help your neighbors and your friends and your family members, you have spent your time figuring out how fast you can spend it, including the $23 million that you're not even going to see till next year. So the notion that somehow that has to be accepted right now so that it can be allocated before a new administration comes in is not only irresponsible, but it is probably one of the most, it's one of the most despicable things I've seen done yet. Please, it is up to you folks. You don't work for the mayor. You work for the people sitting here, and you work for the people who live out there, and you do nothing to reach out to them. I'm begging you, please, make an effort to reach out to your neighbors and your family and your friends and see how they really feel about this, because they don't want the rescue money spent on roofs or police cars. There's plenty of money to do that. Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers? Sorry, I don't know if this was on. Okay, it looks like we will be moving on. Is there no other speakers? Next on the agenda, we have some items on second read. First up, we have introductory ordinance 21-81, considered a finance. Councilman Strawn?
Thank you, Madam President. Ask Council for unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 21-81, an ordinance to account for lost revenue of $12,494,152 per the American Rescue Plan Act guidelines.
Any discussion? Councilwoman Freeman?
Thank you. Also, point of order, does that need a second?
Yes.
Second.
Yes. Thank you.
As tends to happen, I agree with almost everything that was said by our constituents who came, who took time out of their busy schedules to come. So again, thank you for that. And I have to agree. I think one speaker took the words out of my mouth. What I was going to say is that just we're asking the wrong questions here. That up to this point, we've been concerned with, can we do this? Is it legal? And that was the reason why we asked the accounting firm to come in and assure us, because it seemed to me that raised a red flag to me to move a bunch of money. This is a quarter of all of the funds that we are awarded to be unencumbered. And for once, I feel like it's not that common that the guidelines of spending the money is exactly what we should be spending the money on. And it is worrisome to me, the joy with which people, these fiscal financial experts keep saying, oh no, you can do whatever you want with it. Here's a loophole, and you can do whatever you want with it. Well, what I want to do with it is use it to help the people that are most affected negatively by COVID. And those are not the kind of people that are concerned with, oh, maybe a bond, or, if we use this money, then we don't have to bond and I won't have to pay taxes on the interest, right? These are people who have family members who died, or who lost their jobs, or who are about to lose their homes because the eviction moratorium is no longer protecting them. So these are way more dire needs for these funds. And I worry, why are we trying to skirt these 5 bullet points that guide where the ARPA funds can be spent? Why aren't we chomping at the bit to send funds directly where they can make the most difference for the people who are devastated by this pandemic? When we were all elected, we all ran for office because we want to help people. And it's hard because a lot of times constituents will call me and they'll say, I really need this, or can you help me with this? And it's like, a lot of times I can't. There's nothing I can do. And now we have this unprecedented opportunity where we can help people who are so desperate. And I am so worried that if we move this money into this unrestricted fund, this amount of money, we're flushing it down the toilet. And so I would like to make a motion, actually, to amend this piece of legislation to, instead of $12,494,152, I would like to make a motion to amend it so we move the actual loss of revenue, which does not include the capital projects fund, which is mostly funded, my understanding is through bonds or essentially loans. So I would like to amend that number to $6,224,025.68, which will make up for the loss of revenue that the city has
Second.
Any discussion?
Was there a second? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Question to call, roll call, please.
Okay, this is a vote on the amendment. Councilman Scaringi? Councilwoman Riley?
Aye.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Aye.
Councilman Burns?
Aye.
Councilman Strawn?
Nay.
Councilman Scanlon?
Nay.
President Restnetti?
Nay.
So that is 3 ayes, 4 nays, Scaringi, Strawn, Scanlon, and Restnetti.
So then,
Thank you, Council
there you
President.
go.
Again, as I've always said at every meeting, we have public comment so that we can hear from our constituents. Our last few meetings, I have asked for additional time to open the floor for feedback from our constituents. You remember that because I looked at you, Tom. That's how we went out and campaigned. That is not something I think this administration is accustomed to. Listening to the people to garner the support of the majority population. Or perhaps, if you define majority population a different way, perhaps that's what we are accustomed to doing. Again, this money has a defined purpose. In the first iteration, where Chuck Shager came before us, as you all know, it did not include capital lines. Capital lines, again, if you were looking from a budgetary perspective, typically you would not plan your budget based upon grants, based upon loans, what have you. However, the government has allowed us to include certain lines within that budget structure to estimate our losses. As was said before, just because it's allowed doesn't mean it needs to be done. And why do we say that? You say, hey, we can use this money as we want. But history has shown us that it's not about as we want. It's about how one person wants and then the followers that then support that idea. And it's time out. So again, the money to make Binghamton whole in terms of losses was the $6 million that was sent to us by Chuck Shager that Councilwoman Friedman shared. The 12 is what is allowable. We've heard several times from our constituents. We will continue to hear from our constituents. We need to do our due diligence with this money so that everyone can live in Binghamton with a hope, not only to live to make it the next day, but to know that there's a body that is working on their behalf to prioritize their needs. And right now, we have not necessarily been doing so. And this is one thing we can do in terms of prioritizing the needs based upon what we've heard, what we see, what we drive through to get here to do better for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Somebody call the question?
Yeah,
Oh,
Madam
sorry.
President.
Go ahead, Councilman Burns.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. You know, we're voting tonight, you know, just how we got here at this point. And we're voting tonight because we held it over. We didn't want to vote on it until we actually had when we had our work session, and Chuck was at the work session, and we started talking about getting money from that capital projects fund. And until that time, when he first came to us about the loss, I think it was like 3.5 million. It went to 4 million, and even when it went to 6 million, we were surprised it went to 4 to 6. And but I was okay with the 6 million. I'm okay making the city whole. I believe that helps all taxpayers across the board. And so we wanted to, so when he started talking about the capital improvements fund and the capital projects fund and how we're using that to say we lost another $6 million. So it was too vague to me. So I asked to hold it over and we would bring in the consultant which came up with that figure. The consultant came in, and it seems to me, and I know I did my due diligence. I know that this consultant is working for other municipalities our size. Troy, New York, for one, hired them, and they got almost exactly the same amount of money as us. They got $45.3 million. I called the senator's office, Senator Schumer's office, and what everybody says is that what we're doing is legal. It's okay. This formula that he's using an equation into the government services, public sector law, the public sector loss, that the services there was loss within the services that you can't really compute in our budget. You know, it's sort of like I don't know, he's using his imagination, I think, in some ways. But even though it's legal to do it, I think it goes against the spirit of the law. The law, and I really hate to bring Democrats and Republicans into this, but in Congress, every single Republican voted against this money. And now we have the money, and it's the Republicans that are saying that how we spend the money. And I just think that it's somehow we should be looking, listening to the consultant the other night. They're trying to find ways to keep the money. We're trying to find ways to help the municipality and not help the people that live in the municipality. And the municipality, remember that old thing about corporations aren't people and all that? Well, this city is people. We wouldn't have a city without the people. And I believe that what we lost was $6 million. And I would like to keep it at that. So I think the spirit of the law, people talk about the spirit of the law all the time. I think the spirit of the law is being broken at what we're doing. And when we go through the budget, right, we're about to start the budget. I think the mayor has September 15th to present the budget to us. We're going to go through that budget line by line, right, with every department. Well, why can't we go through this capital projects fund that they were talking about the other night that we all know about, but why didn't we go through that line by line and show us line by line where that loss was, instead of just making it so wide, just telling us, we need to see precisely where that money is. So, and also I think that we are acting so quickly to spend the money. We have 4 years to spend the money. We should be on a 4-year schedule to spend the money, and we are now on a 4-month schedule to spend the money. And I think we should take our time. I think that if we made it $6 million, and then let us go through it line by line. If we were to vote no on this tonight, let us go through it line by line in that project, in the project fund. Show us exactly where you come up with $6 million, and I could vote yes if that was the way it was. If you can really show me, but I don't think that was shown properly to us. So I am in favor of making the city whole. I'm in favor of the taxpayers of the city of Binghamton. I just think that this money, I don't want it to be used for pet projects. I want it to be used for human beings. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Someone call a question?
Call the question, Madam President.
Question called?
Councilman Scaringi?
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley?
Nay.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Nay.
Councilman Burns?
Nay.
Councilman Strawn?
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon?
Aye.
President Rusnetti?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, 3 nays, Riley, Friedman, and Burns.
Thank you. We're moving on to introductory ordinance 21-85, considered in planning with Councilman Strong. But I did want to say, just like I mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago, although there's absolutely no conflict of interest, I have nothing to gain financially or otherwise, I would like to abstain just based on the fact that our State Street and my husband's business are adjacent. And so with that, do I need a motion?
Madam President, motion to allow you as the second council district representative to abstain for the following reason that you have described.
Second.
Regarding, excuse me. Regarding introductory 21-85, all in favor?
No, we're for
Okay,
extension.
I'm saying stay. All in favor for President Rusnetti abstaining, please?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Aye.
Got to introduce them.
Councilman Strawn, please.
Thank you, Councilman Scanlon. I ask council for introductory ordinance unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 21-85, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of Binghamton to rezone 4 tax lots related to Bates Troy Cleaner. I would like to make a note that the seeker motions and approvals regarding this legislation were approved at the last meeting. Thank you.
Second.
Comments? Councilman Friedman, please.
Thank you, President Pro Temp. Is that the right title?
I think so.
I wanted to clarify that I was the one who held this piece of legislation over, just because, like one of the speakers said, I did receive a document regarding this during the meeting, so I did not have a chance to review it prior to that time, and I try and make a practice of being as, educated and informed as possible. So I was able to review the documents, so I wanted to not apologize, because I don't think I did anything wrong, but I do want to acknowledge that I did make this process a little bit longer, and I wanted to explain the reason why. But I do understand that this is being done so that, well, one of the benefits is to provide space for parking so that there aren't as many cars on the street, so it will theoretically actually free up on the street parking. So I think that it's it's sort of formalizing the use that the lots are already being used for. So I just wanted to explain my reasoning. Thanks.
Councilwoman Riley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. I just wanted to also highlight, we had a lot of commentary surrounding Bates Troy and their presence at the meeting last time. And there was some information shared during the meeting and after the meeting. However, this legislation, only for those in the audience that may not know, Bates Troy owns the lots. We're changing the zoning so that it's no longer residential to make it commercial. So it's not giving lots. And I think there was a lot of confusion in my inbox when we left that meeting. So I just wanted to clarify that the zoning changed, or they were seeking to change the zoning. And so the other issues can still be pursued regarding the cleanliness and other concerns at a later date. But this is specifically regarding a change in the zoning and the taxation. So thank you.
Any other comments?
Call the question?
Call the question, please. Somebody say that. Question's been called? I'm out of practice.
Councilman Scaringi?
Is it okay if I say something?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
No. Thank you, President Pro Tem. Just to add on to what Councilwoman Riley just kind of discussed a little bit. So all this legislation is doing is just creating parity on the majority of the properties that are already owned, which is just a fancier way of basically saying, making it all commercial, like Councilwoman Riley had just discussed. And it's also worth noting that the 2 property parcels that are currently zoned as residential were actually property parcels that a number of years ago, Bates Troy as a business, as a small business here in Binghamton, invested in the neighborhood and actually demolished 2 dilapidated, vacant, unlivable properties. So again, as Councilwoman Riley just iterated, again, this is just making it all commercial, again, as Bates Troy is a local small business. So I hope everyone will support this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments?
Call the question.
Question been called. Roll call, please, Lee.
Councilman Scaringi?
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley?
Aye.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Aye.
Councilman Burns?
Aye.
Councilman Strawn?
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon?
Aye.
And President Restinetti abstains. So that's 6 ayes, 1 abstention, Restinetti.
Okay. Next, we have introductory resolution 21-72. Excuse me, considered in finance. Councilman Strawn.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask Council for unanimous consideration of introductory resolution 21-72, a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept second-round funding from the American Rescue Plan Act in the amount of $23,092,337.
Any discussion? Friedman.
Thank you,
It's a
Madam
second.
President.
Oh, second. Oh. Can I have a second?
Oh, I thought there was one.
Thank you. Councilwoman Friedman.
All right, thank you. So I did sponsor this legislation, but I have been thinking, as I'm sure we all have, a lot about the ARPA funds, and I have watched as we have considered and approved multiple uses of this funding that are, in my opinion, irresponsible and unhelpful and not what any of our constituents want this funding to be spent on. I am nervous about the amount of funding that has already been, officially or unofficially earmarked. And like Councilman Burns said earlier, and how a lot of the people in the audience said, why are we rushing this, especially with the Delta variant showing us that the pandemic is not over? We are probably going to have usage or needs for this funding that that are not apparent yet. And while I know that accepting the money is not the same as spending the money or earmarking it, I'm so nervous that if we accept this money now, it's gonna go out the window before, like just the way that it has been going, with no transparency, no, big picture considerations, no public input or very little public input. And so I'm nervous. This makes me nervous. And I have to act. I was elected and hired to act with my constituents' best interests in mind and the city's best interests in mind. And giving this administration full control over this entire $46 million, in my opinion, is not in our best interests.
Any other comments?
Yeah. Madam President.
Councilman Burns?
What's it? Go ahead.
Go ahead. She was looking at you.
I was just going to say that, in my mind, this part of the legislation is just a formality to take it. I'm definitely open to, I'm definitely open to conversations about not specifically earmarking that until, till the new administration comes in, at least having that conversation. To me, this is just a formality to accept the money from the U.S. Treasury, but not to actually spend it in any way, shape, or form. So,
Thank you. Councilman Burns?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. A lot of the money has been spent well, I think. So, we had a lot went to affordable housing and the YWCA and et cetera, et cetera. There's $3 million in here that's promised for housing out of the second round, which I think we probably all agree that that's okay. However, I did speak to the senator's office and several other places, and it's not necessary for the mayor to accept the money. There are municipalities doing that, accepting it, but I don't think it's necessary, and so I'll be voting no.
Thank you. Councilman Riley?
Thank you for that. Yes, Angela Riley. We've already seen through press releases and then further discussion that this administration publicized allocating $6 million towards housing. When asked, was 6 coming out of the 23 under his administration, it was later explained that no, he was giving a forecast of what will be allocated for next year in the next tranche. I shared the sentiments of most that we've heard this afternoon in terms of opposing the acceptance at this point. yes, we can discuss not allocating it. But the principle is, if we accept it, we will start seeing press releases as to what should be done. That is what we have seen historically. So we can only expect it in the future. I too will be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Sorry.
Councilman Sirinji, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. I think with respect to what Councilwoman Friedman addressed a little earlier and the Delta variant, I brought this up, I think it was our last meeting, and I think Councilman Burns kind of spoke on this a little bit as well, particularly with this round 2 of funding. I think there's a way in which we can look at this through a different lens and be a little bit more proactive, which is that perhaps I'll continue proactively. Thank you. I think this body should consider 2 good points that were made, I think, by both Councilwoman Friedman and Councilman Burns, that particularly due to the Delta variant and an uncertainty of where this might go over the next couple of months, particularly out of the round 2 funding, maybe we should prioritize a set amount of funds to be held to react to that in case that gets worse, particularly with the winter coming upon us and not knowing where that might lead. Number 2, I think this presents us with an opportunity to be able to, together as a body, find some parity and agreement on what we, as a body, would like to see these funds allocated for. Both Councilwoman Friedman and Councilwoman Riley, at our last meeting, spoke quite passionately about more of an equilibrium in the discussions between the 2 branches about how these round 2 funds should go. And so that being said, that first step would be to accept the funds. Granted, not required. I admit that freely up front. But, on the same token, not unrequired either. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Call the question, Madam President?
Question for Paul? Did you have a
Joe,
comment?
if you have
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam
Another
President. I just wanted to say that the council just approved $12 million when we could have gone line by line through that fund, that the projects fund, and save that $7 million for exactly what you just said. We already have that money. So we're now talking about the next couple of months when now the money's all gone. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilwoman Riley.
Just to follow up on what Councilman Burns just said. So the 12 million is there, it's not been allocated. We can reserve that entire 12 million to start working towards the resurgence in the Delta variant. Similar to what, instead of waiting for the second tranche, let's talk about it for this 12 million. Thank you.
Now, anyone else? Somebody go. Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Madam President. I just would like to add one quick thing that Councilman Skirnji, I agree with you in principle, but we have seen that that's not how this is working. That I would love to sit down and get a plan and see, okay, this is, what this is for. We're going to allocate this money for this and blah, blah, blah. But we, like, when did we get the first tranche of money? How many months ago? 4? And it's already all gone, and like, we didn't really have any input on that at all. And so if this was the first round of funding and I was like, oh yeah, that sounds good, maybe it'll work out that way, we have proof that it's not working that way. And I have to be honest that as the minority party, again, like, I hate to bring party into this, but we so often vote down party lines that it's like, our voices, my constituents' voices, haven't been represented in allocating this money at all. And so I wish it could be that way. But like, fool me once, fool me twice.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman Scringi.
Thank you, Madam President. During the discussion that we had at last week's work session, or forgive me, this Monday's work session, when Bonadillo made their presentation, I believe it was 26 additional municipalities throughout the state of New York. Notwithstanding requirements or non-requirements, my understanding from what Bonadillo stated is that moving forward in this action is consistent with every other municipality that they're working with, including municipalities that are similar to ours, like Utica and Troy. We were all there. So, not looking at this from a party perspective, I have 3 colleagues here to my left who, a little while back, held a Zoom meeting for people to publicly speak at and offer their input. I was there. I was there for the entire meeting. In fact, I have it right here because I spoke to Councilman Burns specifically about this. This is the list of 17 categories that were submitted by everyone that spoke. Public transportation, sewer water infrastructure, rehabilitation services, reentry services, affordable care, children and elderly, service learning programs, black-owned business development, premium pay, essential workers, infrastructure playgrounds, support for business development, develop a land trust, mortgage programs, city social workers, broadband, childcare, and housing. We are not doing ourselves any service by moving what is consistent with the law in terms of the formula of calculating lost revenue as an exception to the rule. Respectfully, as all of my colleagues here know, there are not 5 categories for ARPA funding. There are 6. That was pointed out to all 7 of us. One of those categories is lost revenue. President Biden has spoken about this many, many times. President Biden has also spoken very publicly about moving both Round 1 and Round 2 funds out, encouraging municipalities to accept these funds as quickly as possible, for 2 reasons that the President articulated. Number one, to expand economic activity and growth. And number two, in relation to COVID-19. The formula is not something imaginary. It was written in the law. The very same law that you point out that no Republican voted for. But you know what that means by definition? Every Democrat did. That's their formula. That's not ours. And I don't care about the party breakdown. That doesn't help the discussion, right? I agree with all three of you. We don't need to pay attention to press releases. So, I'm going to throw this out there because I have not gotten an email or a phone call or a suggestion from any one of my colleagues. Let's have a meeting with the 7 of us where the only agenda item is to look at those initiatives line by line. And with respect to round 2, come up with a bipartisan proposal from this entire body that respects all of those suggestions, both from our constituents, from our experiences, and the people that we represent. Let's not throw party into it. And I think moving forward in that fashion is actually beneficial and proactive.
Thank you, Councilman Scringy. Councilwoman Riley.
Thank you again, Council President. And you know what, Councilman Scaringi, I said that very same thing via email to all of you when we first heard we were receiving the money before every city even began planning. It was very early on. I know you received
That was,
the email.
yeah, that was a few I remember.
Yes, and I was told we were not going to meet because there were others responsible for allocating the resources. So I'm glad to hear your suggestion. I look forward to a robust conversation that's inclusive. I've been saying the same thing for the past few months. I'm also glad to hear that you listed the concerns that were highlighted in our meeting. This is the first time anyone has recognized that that meeting had positive outcomes in terms of assessing the needs of the population. It's what our constituents say when they come here. I don't care if it's 1, I don't care if it's 20 that come here and say it. They send emails, they send messages on Facebook. They want to be heard. We should not invalidate the message because we don't agree with the messenger. They need to be heard. Now, I'm also glad you brought up every other municipality. As I also mentioned when I brought up the calculator, because remember I wrote NICOM, and then that email was sent back to you guys with the calculator attached. That was done so that you could receive maximum benefit in a system where transparency is prioritized. You mentioned Utica. As soon as they heard they were receiving funds, the mayor had an open discussion with the community. There were no press releases first. It was transparent. It was open. It was inclusive. So would they go with the full, robust 12 million? Sure, because they trust the process. I've said that again, and I know maybe you might not understand me. We know there's some communication difficulties. I'm from the Midwest. I'll leave it at that. But the issue here is that if the process were open, transparent, inclusive, perhaps we would be having a different conversation. So I'm glad you brought up those other municipalities, Troy, Utica, especially since they were the ones that were matched most closely with us. They also had an inclusive process from the beginning. which was what I asked for several months ago. So I am open to having this discussion. I'm open to having a conversation with the public where they write, call, what have you. But it doesn't need to just surround the 23 that is forthcoming. As we recall, because we were uncertain, and I kept saying, just like a checkbook, we can't approve things without knowing what's ahead. We all received this document outlining what is proposed. Many of these have not been approved. We can start the conversation now. That 12 million has not been approved for use anywhere. It has been discussed. We've heard and we've seen some great pictures, but it's not been allocated. So we can start a conversation. And if we really want to do what's best, we can start the conversation with the money that has not been allocated as of today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman Strong?
Yeah, I was interested to hear that list that Councilman Scringy just said. And other than the way I look at this list, other than the infamous roof, everything is on that list. We talked about broadband. We talked about water and sewer. That's on that list. We talked about essential workers. That's on here. We talked about housing. There's a lot of housing on here. So a lot of that is on that list that we have already done. So I don't understand why we're so far off the beaten path. We did talk in theory about the community center. One of the speakers tonight said one of the initiatives should be community and youth services and programming. Well, I don't know what would be more community and services youth programming than that in our center city. Yes, they do, sir. Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Stop saying that people agree. Then where are the people that come out and speak up and agree with you during these meetings? How come it's always us that are disagreeing?
One of the speakers said community.
Where are they to speak and say that they agree with you? Stop lying.
One of the speakers said community and youth services program. That's all I'm repeating, and that's what that would be. And I've talked to a lot of people that do agree with that. So almost everything that's on this list is from that list, and that's it. I don't see anything on this list that deviates that far from what's already been presented.
Thank you, Councilman Strong. Go ahead, Councilman Riley.
And I'm glad we're having this conversation, almost like a work session. The thing about the community center is we've asked what will happen at that community center. What services will be provided? What will be in the building? What will it do for those in and around the community that need services? Have you received a proposal? We asked for it. We've not seen it yet. So that's the only thing. And when it comes to mental health, it's not there. And we know, if you don't know, come hang with me on Main Street. We'll see a population that we long to help, but we can't because of resources. Not here. We talk about essential services. We've missed ambulance workers and firemen. Who's driving our people to the hospital for COVID-related issues? And we know they were taxed, right? So, I mean, there's areas that people are bringing back. Yes, we touched the surface, but let's dig a little deeper. That's all. That's what I think people are saying. So again, I appreciate this conversation.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
No,
I'm
no.
not saying all 17 were either. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, no. But again, just that, I mean, again, that's why we have these conversations. And this is fruitful. So we will move forward based upon these conversations. So thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President, really quickly, just to kind of sum all that together, maybe we should look into what committee this falls in. I'm assuming finance, and then maybe, or whatever the appropriate committee is, and schedule a committee meeting, and let's get that on the docket so the 7 of us can actually meet and discuss this. That probably would be a good idea. And if there, go ahead, Council. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. In regard to the consultants working for the other cities and them using the same equation. We know they're working for the other cities. I've been searching to see what equation they've been using, but we don't know. I mean, you're saying it as if you knew for sure that they're using this exact same equation to get to their losses. And that's also to the point of what is our hurry. Not that we should do what other cities do, but we're rushing so. You know, why do we have to invent the wheel? Why are we rushing so fast to spend the money when, you know, we should, you know, let the dust settle on everything and look to see what other people are proposing. Maybe somebody's got a good idea that we didn't think of. And so I'm going to keep looking at that, and I'm sure you are too. And we'll see. Thanks.
Thank you. Somebody called Councilman Freeman.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm wondering, this is a question, a non-rhetorical question, this is the actual question. I wonder if we can vote on this with the stipulation that we follow Councilman Scaringi's proposal of a Finance Committee meeting, and we can commit to not allocating any of this money until we have a more robust plan of, and big picture plan of how it might be spent. And I'm wondering how my colleagues feel about that.
Councilwoman, this is second read legislation. It has to be voted on as is.
I mean,
You can remove your name, but it has to be voted on as is.
I see. An unofficial stipulation, maybe? Okay.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the clarification, Council. At this point, do I have somebody call the question?
Call the question, Madam President.
Question to call?
Councilman Scaringi?
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley?
Nay.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Nay.
Councilman Burns?
Nay.
Councilman Strawn?
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon?
Aye.
President Restinetti?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, 3 nays, Riley, Friedman, and Burns.
Okay, let's move on to the preferred agenda. Would anyone like to pull anything from the preferred agenda before we move on? Okay, thank you. Mr. Clerk, please introduce the preferred agenda items, please.
Okay, the first item on the preferred agenda is introductory ordinance 21-90, considered in finance. And this is an ordinance to amend the 2021 budget to allocate American Rescue Plan Act funds for broadband improvements with the Southern Tier Network.
Any discussion? Next.
Next, we have introductory ordinance 21-91, considered in finance. This is an ordinance to amend the 2021 budget to allocate ARPA funds for affordable housing.
Any discussion? Next.
Next, we have introductory ordinance 21-92, considered in finance. This is an ordinance to amend the 2021 DPW budget for additional funds for vehicle repairs and parts.
Any discussion? Next.
Next is introductory ordinance 21-93, considered in finance. This is an ordinance to amend the 2021 finance budget for personal services and temporary services.
Any discussion? Okay, next.
Next is introductory resolution 21-73, considered in the Public Works and Parks Committee. This is a resolution authorizing the City of Binghamton to accept a donation of 2 plaques to be displayed at the Recreation Park tennis courts.
Any discussion? Next.
The last item on the preferred agenda is introductory resolution 21-74, considered in finance. This is a resolution to cancel existing agreements with the Family Enrichment Network and the YWCA and enter into new agreements with them for use of ESG COVID funds.
Any discussion?
Motion to approve the preferred agenda is submitted.
Second.
Okay, full roll call, please.
Councilman Scaringi?
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley?
Aye.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Aye.
Councilman Burns?
Aye.
Councilman Strawn?
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon?
Aye.
President Restinetti?
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, we have, we have some items of non-preferred. First up, we have introductory ordinance 21-87, considered in finance. Councilman Strawn.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask council for unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 21-87, an ordinance to amend the 2021 budget to allocate American Rescue Plan Act funds for improvements to the water filtration plant and the sewer and water pump stations.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilwoman Friedman?
Thank you, Madam President. So in my talks with my constituents, I don't think anybody specifically said, oh, I support, water, water infrastructure. Or no, maybe they did. This isn't an exciting allocation of the funds necessarily, but COVID has thrown into sharp relief the fact that public health in a pandemic with a communicable disease is, a rising tide lifts all boats. And what I mean by that is access to clean water and housing and food and shelter are human rights. And so even though this is a large chunk of money, I do feel comfortable spending some of it to, if it means that people have access to clean water. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Call the question, Madam President.
Question to call? Roll call, please.
Councilman Scaringi?
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley?
Aye.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Aye.
Councilman Burns?
Aye.
Councilman Strawn?
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon?
Aye.
President Rosnetti?
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Passes. Next, we have introductory ordinance 21-88, considered in finance. Councilman Strawn.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask council for unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 21-88, an ordinance to amend the 2021 budget to use the fund balance to purchase equipment for police and DPW.
Any discussion?
Second.
Councilwoman Freeman?
Thank you, Madam President. This comes at a convenient time because isn't it interesting that we just moved $12 million into the general fund, and so I know we are not directly using ARPA funds for this, but I can't help but notice the fact that we moved $12 million of ARPA funds into the general fund in the same meeting that we're voting to use the fund balance, which I feel like we rarely do, to purchase equipment for police and DPW. So I don't, while I don't necessarily disagree with using the fund balance for things rather than bonding out for them, which would mean that we would have to pay interest, it does make me a little wary because this is the kind of thing that I'm worried about when I hear things like, now you can use ARPA funds for whatever you want. So I know they're not directly related, but this is exactly the kind of thing that, again, makes me nervous. I know I used that word a lot this meeting. So I'm wary of this large amount of money going toward this. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Call the question, Madam President.
Question to call? Roll call, please.
Councilman Scaringi?
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley?
Nay.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Nay.
Councilman Burns?
Aye.
Councilman Strawn?
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon?
Aye.
President Rosnetti?
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, 2 nays, Riley and Friedman.
Thank you. Next item is introductory ordinance 2189, considered in finance. Councilman Strawn.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask council for unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 21-89, an ordinance to amend the 2021 budget to use the fund balance to reduce debt costs associated with the new community center and park improvements at Columbus Park.
Any discussion?
Madam President,
Councilman Strong? I'm sorry, Scanlon.
I'd like to make a motion to amend introductory ordinance 21-89 to replace long-term debt with funding from the American Rescue Plan Act funds. Need a
Second?
I'm sorry, for the record, was there a second on the initial introduction?
Was there? Okay. So, can we have a second on that?
There was, oh, okay, I'll second
Can
it,
you
I'm
second
sorry.
that? Okay, thank you.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay. Any discussion on this,
On the amendment.
on the amendment? Any discussion on the amendment?
I can read it again. I'd like to make a motion to amend introductory ordinance 21-89 to replace long-term debt with funding from the American Rescue Plans Act funds.
And so there's discussion. Is there anything else
What-
that needs to be discussed, or anyone would like to discuss regarding this?
Point of information, where does it say long-term debt?
I don't have that in front of me. I guess I don't.
Reduced debt.
If you look in the second whereas, the expected total project is $7,200,000 to be paid, $1,100,000 from
I
CDBG
see.
funds, $3
Second
million from
paragraph,
fund
Roman
balance,
numeral 3.
the remaining $3,100,000 from long-term debt.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Councilwoman Riley, I'm sorry. I didn't see
Thank
Go ahead.
you, Council President. So what line item are you trying to move this $3 million from?
The only amendment I said was to change from long-term debt to funding from the American Rescue Plans Fund.
So from the ARPA funds in
Yes.
general?
Yes.
In other words, take it off from the ARPA.
Yes.
Is there any more discussion?
Yes, Madam President.
Councilman Burns, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I would like to hold this over. I make a motion to hold this over.
Wait, there's a motion on the floor,
Oh,
though.
we have to vote on that motion first?
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
Oh,
you
sorry.
have to finish the motion.
Just for clarification, is that the ARPA direct or
Right.
the transferred ARPA funds from the?
I'm saying the ARPA funds.
So there's no clarification?
And I have a question. Is that from next year? Because the ARPA
Right.
funds this year is all used up. Is this from next year's ARPA funds?
I don't believe you can use next year's ARPA funds.
No?
Well, according to the breakdown that I have, there's nothing left in this year's.
Yeah. Can we ask court counsel for clarification?
Typically, we have line items, though. So in a resolution, we would have line items stating where the fund is coming from. So
They would be from the ARPA funds.
which
And
line?
I assume, that since you've accepted the second, it could be from any portion of the ARPA
Yeah,
funds.
that's what I thought.
We need clarification, though.
It's from the ARPA funds. What are you asking? It's from the ARPA funds. What are you asking?
Are you requesting it from this first tranche, or are you requesting from the second tranche?
From the ARPA funds.
Yeah,
You-
I don't
There's no
believe we can
distinction.
touch the second fund.
Well, there's no distinction.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a, Madam President? Yeah, just as a point of information, this is a big problem that we're having because the fact that there's a round one and a round two it's literally nothing more than an accounting entry more than anything else. It's being distributed to municipalities in that manner because that is the way the federal government laid it out, right? That's literally all it is. So I think what Councilwoman Riley was talking about earlier, the paper that we see that started lending out to those proposed allocations, right, not actual allocations, there isn't a differentiation to be made. I think it's just a number to the running total. I could be wrong, Corp Counsel, I don't know if you can weigh in on that, but
Yeah, it's just, it's an accounting. It's $46 million.
Point of clarification, because we need to look back at the legislation where Chuck Shager said we had to create separate line items because of the amount of money and then the separate accounts in which these monies will be held. Do you guys not remember that conversation?
so if I may respond to that, yes, I do remember that. And number one, that was specifically in relation to two things. Number one, the portion of the ARPA funds that deal specifically with lost revenue. And number two, with the money that is under the category, the 12 million of the lost revenue, it has to be apportioned into specific line items because each one of those respectively have to be voted on us, by us,
Individually.
as individual RLs. So that referred to that.
And I believe that would be covered by the motion, because the
Correct.
amendment would be to create those line items.
Exactly. Madam President, I think.
Councilwoman Friedman
Go ahead.
and then Burns.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President. I don't feel comfortable with that amendment because it is antithetical to the discussion that we just had about meeting together to lay out how the big picture of how we want to see the ARPA funds spent, and to decide right now that we're going to allocate over $3 million from that to this youth center. I don't agree with that.
And Burns, I
Yeah,
think you were next.
thank you, Madam President. I agree with what my colleague just said. And we have a balance of $20 million going into next year. This would put it down to $17 million. And we've talked about having, we did have the public forum to talk about what to do with the money. And this would be something that the public should say. Do they want us to spend this money that could be spent in all these other ways? Do our constituents think this would be proper? And I know that this youth center is important to the mayor. It's important to me. I think it's important to all of you. But, again, what's the rush on the youth center? And so why can't we hold off and talk to our constituents about it, about what they want to do?
Thank you.
Madam President, if I just may, Councilman Scanlon, just to get on the record, the proposal for this amendment, I think, at least the spirit of it, is to kind of deal with something that you and I spoke about, I think, 2 meetings ago in relation to bonding, correct? Just one. Thank you.
So at this point, then, we should have a roll call. Is there a comment?
A roll call on the amendment, correct?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Councilman Scaringi?
Due to the impact of the bonding issue, I will vote aye.
Councilwoman Riley?
Since I'm just hearing about it, no.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Nay.
Councilman Burns?
Nay.
Councilman Strawn?
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon?
Aye.
President Resnetti?
Aye.
So that's 4 ayes, 3 nays, Riley, Friedman, and Burns.
Madam President, I am going to try to take a step forward in what Councilman Burns spoke a little while ago. I'm in a motion that we hold this over.
Second.
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 So we can further.
Thank you.
discuss
Okay,
this.
so we'll hold this over.
And Madam President,
Yes, Councilman Burns?
the reason I was going to hold it over, and I just want to make everybody aware of it, is that I have friends over at St. Mary's Church, and the mayor had spoke to them long before we went into Columbus Park to build, to get the drawings and to hire everybody to design it. we were in discussion with St. Mary's, and they did not want to sell their recreation center. I've heard now that they might come around and want to sell it. And they're going to have a meeting. They have their meeting before our next business meeting. They will have a parish council meeting, and we will know more. And if they were open to that, it has a gymnasium, it has classrooms, it has a kitchen, and it might be something that we as a council could go look at to say, would this really work? You know, and we could spend money fabricating it to make it work for what we want. So, that's.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Riley?
Thank you, Council President Rezzanetti. I hate to beat a dead horse, but again, I mentioned putting properties that would fit the bill back on our tax rolls, or at least revitalizing and using these vacant properties or potentially vacant properties way back when this proposal was brought before us. As you know, I mentioned the property on Front Street was my preferred. It had the exact same square footage. It's still for sale. It would be great. It's accessible. Another story. I do want to highlight, though, when the mayor came before us, he talked about the cost of receiving materials, the cost of building right now because COVID has caused delays. I want us to really think critically about building something so robust in the midst of a pandemic when we already know the cost of goods has gone up, the cost of labor has gone up, and we have limited access to resources. Not financial resources, building materials. Thank you.
Okay. What else? All right. Thank you. So at this point, we are moving on with,
In terms of this holdover, again, I think there were 2 points made. One, there's a meeting that we may be interested in finding more information from regarding St. Mary's. And 2, we'd like to have public comment surrounding the use of ARPA funding to fund around this revision that just passed. So if we can hold it over, I would ask that we include time to review the bill, to review the building, as well as include public comment. Thank you.
Riley. No? Okay. So moving on to communication from council members at this point. We are starting with District 6, so that would be Councilman Khan.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to thank Code and Zoning. I've had several conversations with them over the past 3 or 4 weeks, and they are helping us to address a lot of properties over in the 6th District, especially with garbage and things like that, and lawn care. And I just want to thank the city for paying attention to that. And I still hoping we can have that conversation as well. I'm not sure what committee that would be in, but I think that's a conversation that we've been talking about now for almost 2 months. So that's probably a conversation we need to have as well. How to strengthen the enforcement mechanisms that the city has to affect those properties, because that does feed into the housing that we've been talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Phase 3 of Robinson Street, it continues. They're working on that daily. The road, as I stated before, try to find an alternate route, take Court Street, take East Frederick Street. There's large equipment out there. There's people, construction workers, so if you have to drive through there, please be careful. I'd like to thank DPW and the Parks Department for a couple issues in my district, and also the Binghamton Police Department. As always, I support the men and women wholeheartedly. They continue to keep us safe in the city, so thank you to them. Thank you, Madam President.
Councilman Scaringi.
Thank you, Madam President. I too want to thank Code and zoning for everything they've been helping out in the first district, as well as with a particular property up on the northern part of the ward, and the subsequent meetings with SEPTED that are going to be coming up through with that. Excited about roads getting done. It's nice to see that the fall is finally coming in. We're getting some cooler weather. Want to welcome back all of our students, both at BU and SUNY Broome. And I would respectfully request that the city clerk maybe can, by email, coordinate something with respect to a committee meeting to discuss, I'm sorry, for the city council members to discuss the possibility of a body proposal, particularly with respect to the funds that are under the round 2 designation. So we can try to, oh yeah, all of us, yes. Oh yes, all of the unallocated is what I should have said. I'm sorry. Yes, that's right. Thank you, ma'am. And that's it. Thank you, Madam President. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Councilwoman Riley goes. Yeah,
District
Councilwoman Riley.
Councilwoman Riley, you're next.
I don't know. It's been a lot today. It's yeah.
Well, it's unfortunate.
Okay. Thank you, Council President. In District 3, we've had a lot going on, as you know. Porch Fest just occurred, and it was a great time for everyone to be out and about safely enjoying their neighbors. So thanks to all of you all that enjoyed and participated in those festivities. The students are back, and they are loving the city, particularly the 3rd District. So welcome back. And yes, in terms of what we talked about with code and zoning, I think that might fall under Public Works, Parks, and Rec. I'm not sure. But I would also second Councilman Strawn's request that we have a meeting under that committee so that we can formalize the processes we've been discussing over and over and over. I happen to be fortunate enough to go out with the code gentleman in the 3rd because they say I call so much, which is based upon the constituents. And he expressed a concern because they don't have enough help. So he mentioned that they will be submitting approval sooner or later, someone is submitting, for another code officer, which we can all probably agree is necessary. And he was there. He explained to the tenants about the trash. He explained to them about maintaining the process while I was there. And perhaps that's what happens all the time. And so we need to support them in those initiatives. That particular building had a broken pane window for 5 weeks, maybe more. And people kept throwing things in it. And so finally they were able to repair it. Code had continuously cited the owner, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, it was a long process. It's done. But the gentleman said because of goods, he was unable to repair the window because there are no supplies. Again, underscoring what I said earlier. We are having people keep writing for more cleanups. I welcome your invitations for cleanups. I just received an announcement that there will be an extension of Porch Fest happening in Walnut Park in a couple of weeks. So please look out for that. Right now, the American Civic Association has been working diligently with our neighbors and friends that have relatives in Afghanistan. So if you are interested in supporting those efforts, please reach out to them. And I think that concludes all that has been happening in the 3rd. Thank you, Angela Riley.
Thank you. Councilwoman Friedman.
Thank you, Madam President. Gosh, Porch Fest is one of my favorite days of the year. I look forward to it every year. It's so much fun. And I get a lot of exercise on my bike, biking around. I think my personal opinion is that bike is the way to do Porch Fest. But, you know, there are some people who disagree with me on that. I wanted to thank the people who stuck it out through this entire meeting. Even, you know, prior to being elected, I considered myself a fairly engaged citizen, but I admittedly rarely made it to the end of city council meetings. So thank you for that. And I'm excited about taking concrete steps together as a body when it comes to being proactive about the code enforcement issue and about the ARPA funds, because these are things that affect our everyday lives and our constituents' everyday lives. Because I think a lot of government stuff seems to be kind of removed. You know, it's sort of happening at a different level that doesn't really, you don't necessarily see immediate effects from the things that we vote on. But ARPA funding and code enforcement, these are things that affect people directly, potentially. So I'm excited about that. And in terms of the 4th district in particular, I had a wonderful meeting today with the representatives from the design firm who are doing the Deco district, and in addition to the stadium district redesign. And so I know that there was some of my constituents had reached out to me and they were kind of confused as to what was going on. And so I'm happy to say from what I saw, the plans look wonderful and that will be publicized fairly soon. So keep an eye out for that. And I'm sure, you know, I'll do my best to publicize that as well. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. And that's Councilman Burns.
Thank you, Madam President. Porch Fest, it was fabulous. And I just want to thank and give kudos to the organizers, all the volunteers, the mayor, the police department, the city workers. It went off just beautifully, and pat on the back for all of you. Just absolutely a wonderful community event. And it occurred to me, I meant to mention it the last meeting, but the West Side, a lot of those bands that you heard playing went through the Cyber Cafe, the Jeff Kahn. He was the leader of bringing music, you know, into Binghamton, the whole music scene that occurred the last 20 years or so. And he died unexpectedly about a month ago or so. And it was at his wake, it was a combination. I'm telling you, the people that gathered, it was so big, the wake and funeral, but it was doctors and lawyers and hippies and politicians, and he's the only person in the world that I know that could have brought this group together to honor somebody. And so I just wanted to say good luck, Jeff, wherever you are. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And I'll just add a couple of things to that. First of all, I too wanted to say, wow, Porch Fest was really amazing, and I wanted to thank the organizers, anybody who was involved. What a great community event, and it was just great to see people walking around. The weather was good, the music was good, and everybody had fun. I think they really did. I mean, a lot of good bands. I thank everybody for their participation, and we are looking forward to, of course, next year doing it again. BU classes started about a week ago. This is not about exactly a week ago, and I wanted to say a big good luck to everybody, as there's still some uncertainties in what's happening regarding COVID. We're all back in person, and crossing our fingers that it will be a productive year, with health. Obviously, that's a priority. I did wanted to make a couple quick comments regarding Rec Park. Just some information. So, the tennis courts, my understanding is that that work will be done by the end of this week. Of course, we have weather like today that we can't control, and I don't know how that impacts that. But that's pretty much that's kind of like the timeline. There's some new seating that will be completed also with the installation of wooden pads and railing. Let's see what else is going on over there. We have, so there were some nice poles, as we know, they were being replaced, but I did want to say that have nothing to do with the tennis courts or the ice rink. It's just a couple of them, I believe, will be on Highland Avenue and a couple on Beethoven, and that was just because it was just necessary, I guess, for electricity purposes in that area. And just a couple comments about the ice rink, a little bit further down from the tennis court. So the ice rink project was announced by the mayor in 2020, and I remember the excitement from so many folks in the community, and was reading some of the comments on social media and so forth. And really the only negative, if you want to call them that, comments were that it wasn't going to be big enough. I think folks that had been in the community for a long time had that kind of like nostalgic feeling of having an ice rink at Rec Park, as I guess many years ago we used to have one. So I wanted to say that because of the questions regarding the construction, I understand that right now it looks like it's a big mess. It's actually, it looks like it's going right now a lot bigger than it really is going to be because of just digging up the area surrounded. That's going to be reseeded. There's no trees that are being removed. People were so excited to see this project come on board. Rec Park is such a jewel in our community. We have so much to offer. Families of all ages have been able to utilize everything that Rec Park has to offer. And I think there was a bit of a gap there. Rec Park is great in the summertime, but what do we have for families, kids to use and have fun and play like during the winter months? And so this is just, one way to kind of gap that and allow folks to go out there and have fun. God knows winters are long around here, and they are looking and are excited to have something else to do. And so I'm personally very excited about it. Trying to think what else I can tell you about that, because there have been some questions. And just to, I guess it's a little bit of a personal note regarding the special place that Rec Park has in my heart, and how excited I am to see it grow, and for all of us to come together and support projects. When we migrated to this country, I lived in those apartments there at Rec Park, and those weren't easy years, especially there were like 7, 8 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment, and our only sanctuary for a long time was Rec Park. We went there, we used the carousel, did whatever, and I know that I'm not the only one, or wasn't the only one, and I guess I say that because as we move forward with these projects, I just hope and I see somebody else in that position where maybe they can't afford to go on vacation or to do whatever, but it can be a bit of a sanctuary. It can be for fun. It can be just get away and just catch your breath, walk in some green, under the trees, ice skate, whatever you got to do. So I am excited to continue to see it grow. I'm excited to see the ice rink come into place. And once construction is over, it will, I'm sure, will look a lot better. I support it, and I thank all of you who are supporting this. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned.